I'm going to be ground driving Dakota today. So I've kind of got my drive lines all to one side. She's kind of walking off here. Probably should have asked her to stop here, but I just kind of went with her. I have my ground driving lines clipped on, and then I'll just have that outside one up over the saddle. She stopped there, so I went ahead and clicked and reinforced her because she responded to the gentle pressure on the lines. I'm just going to fling that over and go ahead and have her walk on here. So I've had her prepped for ground driving, and she's ground driving before in other videos, and I explained kind of how I got to this point. And now I'm just gonna have her go over this pole, but she's just kind of doing a refresher here at this point. Um, Really, she understands the basics of ground driving. She probably just needs a bit more fine tuning. She needs a bit more steering, a bit more trot and canter work, and that's pretty much it. For the ground driving part, and then I'll go move on to like enhanced stuff so she can do a little bit more difficult things. So I asked her to halt there, and she halted nicely, and then she let me come up behind her. And you gotta just with ground driving, you're gonna always have to be aware of where those lines are, and I really need to get in the habit of not letting her just walk off and walking off on my cue, because that's going to be something I need to teach her under saddle, so I might as well start now. But she's so good, so I let her do things that I don't want, but I need to pay attention to that. But so it's always being aware of your lines. So she was already desensitized. I'm trying to get that line out from under her tail. And she's okay with that. She's very quiet. She's already been desensitized to the lines. She understands the whole process. So she's just kind of looking off at something. I'm just gonna ask her to go on here. Um, but being aware of where your lines are, I think I have the lines just kind of going between my legs so I can they're just kind of in one spot. I don't want them off, getting tangled up, getting tangled with me or the horse or anything like that, and any of the obstacles. So it's just you have to be very aware of your horse and the lines and do your prep work first. And then I kind of switch with her. Like when I go up to give her reinforcement, I either swing the outside line up over her back onto the saddle, or I'll just kind of add some slack there so that it can go around her hocks and stay there, and she'll kind of stay and stand, and it kind of depends on your horse and where you're at, but I kind of mix those two things up so she can get used to either of those, and then I try to do it on either side as well. So she's just in a rope halter with little like rings on the side, so it's a little side pole kind of thing. um, and then I kind of like I'm doing two things with the so she's kind of stopped on her own. She's pretty um, oh, I think I asked her to stop there, so I'll go ahead and reinforce that. So I think I asked her to stop, and then she kind of left again, and I asked her again, and then I reinforced that. So she likes to stop on her own as well. She's pretty slow, lazy, laid back, doesn't have a whole lot of forward, which is fine. I wanted to work on the whoa and the stopping as well. But when I'm moving the lines, the drive lines, I'm not going to pull on her face. I'm going to just kind of move them around, and I'm trying to get them out of her tail, but it's also doing two things. It's desensitizing on her as well. So, but I just asked her to stop here and went ahead and give her a treat, and I'll kind of back away there like I was about to ask her to go, and she didn't leave. So I'm going to click and reinforce that. And then I asked her to go on here. So that's good because she has a little bit of a habit of going on without me. So I want her to wait for me. I really should build up the behavior of standing still. And then my Pivo did not follow me, so I had to cut that out before it caught me again. I just went around the arena to the other side. So, and we're just working on some steering. So like here, I'm asking her to steer to my left, and she'll kind of go for a little bit of a turn, and then she'll just kind of stop. So she has that habit of just stopping when I put pressure versus going through that turn, and that the problem kind of gets compounded because she's so slow, so she needs a bit more energy going forward as well. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I'm just asking her to steer to her right, and she's just like, halt, I could halt. So then she kind of went off here to the right, so I clicked her, and we go ahead and give her a treat, and then I've got the line just kind of draped around her hocks, and she stood nicely for that. I'm just going to ask her to go back off to the right. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of balancing work here. I want her to kind of go the opposite way that she was thinking about going and kind of work on that steering a little bit. So I went ahead and clicked her again because she went off and took a step to the right. And then I'll go back into position here. So I went back to position. She stood still. So I'm going to click and reward that and then come back. because I want to work on that on her waiting for me. I asked her to go on here, so that looks much better. I have my lines organized. I have the just excess dragging behind me. I'd rather have that than them kind of like looped in my hand. I feel like it's just too much. It's a lot to hold on to and a lot to pay attention to, and the loops can just become dangerous if the horse is spooked or running off or any of those things. So I don't want that. I'd rather have them like this. So she halted really nice there. She's staying really nice. I like all of that. So and then she's anticipating a little bit here. Ask her to halt. That was a very nice halt as well because I was very light. So I really like that. Lets me go back into position. So I get all the way back to position and then I click her and come back and give her her treat because she stood there while I came back. So she is making some progress here. So that is quite nice. I'm going to ask her to go on. I'm going to use my voice word or my cue word and then kind of just use a little bit of pressure with my lunge whip, which I'm going to be working on to not have any negative reinforcement with her as well, or as little as possible. So this is her just meandering around. I need to work with her. So I'm asking her to do a right hand turn. And instead of just going forward and turning, she's just halting. So I need to work with her on more forward, more energy, a bit more steering and going through that turn. She took her step over, so I clicked and reward her. But just kind of getting her freed up a little bit more. She just feels pressure on the halter and her default is just halt. So, which is not horrible, but I just want her to be a bit more balanced as far as cues and aids go, so that she's thinking more turn and go through versus stop all the time. I want a good stop cue, like that was a really nice stop response, but I want to make sure that when I ask for a turn, I'm going to get it and I'm not going to get a halt instead. So, just kind of making those cues a bit more clear to her. And like we could have a bit more energy here. She's just kind of moseying along here, no purpose, but she is a pleasure horse, so you could definitely tell. Um, but I want to be able to ask for the energy and get it when I need to. So, she halted nicely there. She is quite good at that. So I should be working on a bit more energy and then balancing out with a halt. And then the same thing with the turns. So working on the turns with also working on the halts and kind of working on those two things at once versus here she's just doing a lot of slow meandering walks and then halts, which are easy to do together. So I should be asking for a bit more energy here. So that was nice. She stayed still while I went back to ask her to go on. So that's good. But I mean, overall, she's being nice and relaxed. She's not worrying about the process. She's quite good to ground drive. The only thing that we really want to do is the energy because that's going to help the steering as well. So again, I'm asking her to steer to my left here, to her left, and she just halted instead. So I'm going to continue to ask her to go forward, and then until she does her turn here. So I click the turning part and then go ahead and reinforce her. So just getting rid of that negative reinforcement, that cue with the whip, so she turned here, so I'm gonna click and reinforce her, is gonna help all of that, I think, because she is kind of shutting down in response to the whip because it's a negative reinforcer. And she's just like, no, I don't want to deal with that. So I need to make it more positive, make going forward more positive. So she wants to put in that energy and work for that a little bit more. So she's kind of wandering off here. Ask her to halt. Good halt. But I don't want to ask her. There we go. That was nice. So I came up, moved around. She stayed still. I'll go ahead and click and reinforce. So I don't want to do too much of she walks off, I ask her to halt, I give her a treat. She might start combining those two behaviors together. I want to mix it up a little bit to where she's not connecting the two. Because if I do that same sequence every single time, she might think that walking off when I go back there is part of the behavior. That's a cue to go walk off, and then I'm going to halt her and give her a treat. So you got to be aware of that. But I think what I'll do is add some cones and some targets and work on this with that and try and get a bit more energy out of her. So again, I'm trying to get her to steer to my right this time, and she just wants to stop instead. So I could go ahead and get a little bit more energetic walk and then ask her to steer. So there she started steering. So I released, ask again. There she's kind of taking a step off to the right. It's a little hard to see. It's getting kind of dark here, but she took that step over to the right. So I clicked that, and I'm just trying to show her that steering is what I want. Not necessarily halting every time you feel pressure, which is probably further confusing her because I have been doing some halts in there. So maybe separating that a bit more for her and just doing some turns, lots of forwards, lots of turns, and then adding in some halts. So there's a nice little jog from her. So and then she halted really nice from that jog. And she's standing really nice here while I get back into position. So I went back over to where I drive her from and then clicked and came back to retreat. So that was really nice. Have her go on here. Because I want her to have the energy part of it, because once I get into cantering and stuff, I don't want her going into that to be a big deal and kind of an explosion, which if I'm using more positive reinforcement won't happen, but she gets into the trot, I click her for that. Because what will happen with negative reinforcement is the horse will give you the minimum at the walk and the trot, and then they aren't used to that forward and kind of like work themselves up a bit and then kind of give you way too much in the canter, and that can happen. Um, so I want to make sure I'm working on the energy in both the walk and the trot, and then you'll have it in the canter as well, and a nice relaxed energy as well. So I went back into position and she didn't walk off, so I'm gonna click and reinforce that. That was excellent. I'm gonna pause before I send her off again, so she can just have that moment, and then I'll ask her to go forward so she's not anticipating and connecting those behaviors and just walking off without me. So I'm trying to get her to steer to my right here. That was better. She was quicker to steer that time instead of just shut down. She did stop at first, but she then did her turn. There, we're getting some turns there. So I clicked that, that's why she stopped.
Walk on.
She could walk on. I probably could have let her stand and wait a little bit longer. I'm asking her to go forward. She kind of stopped on her own there. And then again, I'm trying to get my reins organized here. There we go, turn to the right, and getting my whip organized as well. So she made a turn to the right. I'm gonna click and feed that, and I'm gonna toss that over, if I can get it over. And go ahead and give her her reinforcement. And then I'm just gonna unclip that one closest to me so I can go ahead and get out of the stirrup and then clip it back so I have like a point of contact with her. I have some control with her, and then I'm gonna go on the other side and get that outside line and get that tossed over her back. So then I can come back to this side, have the rein closest to me, just kind of over my arm, so I have that if she wanders off or something while I roll up that outside rein, and then I can go ahead and roll up the one that is connected to her. So that's just a nice way to go about it and make sure that all your equipment is um, organized. There she goes to wander off here. She just wandering off, and then I had that rein over my arm so I could just stop her and then continue organizing those reins. So that's kind of why I have that set up there, so you can just have a point of contact so you have some control and while you're organizing. So that was pretty good for her.